Green Eyes, The Ghost of the Chickamauga Battlefield by LeBron Keener. I live about 3 miles from the Chickamauga battlefield in North Georgia, and all my life I've heard about old Green Eyes. There are many variations to the story, but I'll tell you the one I remember hearing when I was just a boy. It shouldn't be a surprise that the battlefield is haunted. During September of 1863, for 3 days, 125,000 men fought one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War there. Both the Union and Confederate forces together suffered a grand total of 34,624 casualties. There were 24,430 wounded, 6,225 missing or captured, and a total of 3,969 soldiers killed during that bloody battle. Most of the dead lay right where they fell for days, and some were never recovered at all, left to decompose there on those hallowed grounds. The heaviest fighting took place in and around the swampy area along Chickamauga Creek. The creek was deep, and along with the thick underbrush, it made drawing battle lines nearly impossible. Union General John B. Turchin called it bushwhacking on a grand scale. Survivors went on to recount the 3 bloody days and spoke about bullets zinging past them, cannon fire, and projectiles hitting the ground and exploding, slinging shrapnel for yards around. They talked about the screams and witnessing fellow soldiers getting shot and blown up. There was even one soldier who had witnessed a man staggering backwards with his jaw completely gone from his face. A memory, he said, was forever burned in his mind. Men lay on the ground, moaning in pain, some without arms, others without legs, and there was one account of a mere torso of a man laying on the ground, screaming agonizing pleas for help. There was a rebel soldier in that thicket, loading his musket when a cannonball took his head completely off his shoulders, killing him instantly. I guess he was luckier than the poor soldiers who lay in torturing pain. It was he who is most associated with the story of old Green Eyes. It's told that dying a sudden and violent death makes one's spirit roam the earth, and the dead at Chickamauga died violently, full of rage and hatred of one another. Today the battlefield lies quiet and peaceful, and most people in the area consider it sacred ground. But don't let the peacefulness of those vast fields and forests fool you. At dusk, old Green Eyes starts to walk among the many monuments, searching for the remains of his dismembered body. Sightings began not long after the bloody battle itself, and have continued to this very day. In the 1950s, a teenager who was walking through the woods on a cool, foggy evening saw 2 green eyes staring at him. He said they were floating within the fog for a few moments before fading away. They seemed to be the eyes of evil, said the boy. In the 1980s, a husband and wife were driving at night on Lafayette Road toward the town of Fort Oglethorpe when a mysterious figure darted across the road in front of their car. It was dressed in black and wore a cape which seemed to float behind it in the wind. When it turned to look at the passing car, they saw that it had no visible head, but two bright green eyes that seemed to glow in the night. They too said the eyes looked evil. Many people today who drive around the side roads mention the fact that the thermometer on their car's display shows that the temperature can drop as low as 10 degrees between entering and exiting the Chickamauga battlefield. I've witnessed this phenomenon myself and have always been told that the paranormal activity within those woods is a direct result of the cooler temperatures. 4,000 violent deaths in 3 days definitely left its mark on the area. Old Green Eyes has been encountered on Horseshoe Ridge and Snodgrass Hill many times, which is where the battle ultimately ended and is the most active area for paranormal sightings in the park. The Snodgrass cabin was used to treat the wounded both during the battle and in its aftermath, with a lot of deaths occurring from the many wounded soldiers that were brought there. There's been eyewitness accounts of people driving past the many fields at night and seeing two green lights glowing brightly in the darkness, simply hovering among the cannons that are still there on display. Sometimes out-of-towners that have never even heard about Green Eyes have inquired about seeing the strange lights out in the woods and in the field around Wilder Tower. The locals just usually smile and tell them the story. The legend says that he was a Confederate soldier, the same rebel who got his head taken off by the cannonball down by Chickamauga Creek. They say he is still out there, walking in those woods at night, searching for his missing head. It has also been said that the ghost doesn't realize he is dead and is still just as violent as he was on that fateful day back in 1863. If you ever come down to visit and find yourself in the battlefield at night, don't be surprised if you see old Green Eyes staring you down. But don't be too disappointed if you don't, because whether you see him or not, old Green Eyes will still have his eyes on you. Have you ever had an encounter with Green Eyes? Or know anyone who has? Tell us about it in the comments. We would love to hear about it.